We did it!
You did it, tech wizard! I just got a wee error notice about something about room permissions. We'll see.
We'll
We'll see
see.
if it's working.
We're live.
We're live. We're doing it.
We did it.
It was a lot quicker than this morning.
Your fig tree is so gorgeous.
Thank you. This is Henry.
Hi, Henry.
And he started off this size.
No way.
So I'm really, really proud of Henry.
I would be too. Mine completely died, and we just moved into a new house, and I put it outside, and there's 4 new leaves in like a matter of weeks. So I think it's gonna happen. I believe in it.
Just hit my desk, but that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Now, if you are watching us, if you can say hello, so that, hey Leah,
Hi.
so that we know people can see and hear us, and B, so that we remember that we're talking to people.
Yeah.
And don't just talk about fig trees, although they are important.
They are.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah. What are you drinking? Water.
With lemon and chia.
Ooh, fancy.
Hey, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
We'll just give it a couple of minutes. Hi, Stacy. Because it's nice to know who's here and let people arrive. That's all.
Yeah, no problem. Do you like throat coat from Traditional Medicinals, that tea?
I hate licorice.
Oh no.
I know.
Oh no.
I know, like, considering that I'm a herbalist, I have like, there are many, many herbs that I'm just like, nope, don't like it. And, you know, and
I mean, I think that's a common one. A lot of people don't like licorice.
Yeah.
It was not my favorite, but it's really grown on me. Can I tell you the Sanskrit name for it because I love it?
Yes.
Yashti Madhu.
Yashti Madhu?
Yeah.
I love that.
Isn't that so cute? Yashti Madhu.
That's really, it sounds like a wee creature.
Yeah, it sounds so sweet and loving.
Yashti Madhu.
Yashti Madhu. I love it.
Yeah, and it just like, do you think you can push through and get into it?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can.
Because it's like throat coat in general. It's what? It's marshmallow, mint.
I think
fennel?
slippery elm. Yeah, fennel, licorice. But the licorice is definitely prominent.
But it is very moistening.
It is very moistening.
And you and I talk a lot about dryness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll give it a try. I'm gonna give licorice another try because Yashti Madhu.
Yashti Madhu.
Yashti Madhu.
Yeah.
Okay.
DHU. Yashti Madhu.
Yeah. I like that. Who else is here? Say hi.
Hello. Who's here?
Who's here?
Who's here?
It's sort of like being at a party and
Hi, Miriam.
Oh, I think I'm not getting comments. Well, the reason, can I see it? Hang on, I'm just double checking that I can actually. Oh, more comments on my computer. I don't know why this always happens. Hi, Leanne. Hi, Miriam. I can see comments over there. So I'm going to spend half of this time like this.
Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Alexis.
I like that alliteration. Alexis Alexander. I like that.
So, welcome to our double live wonder party. For those of you who do not know Anjali, she is an Ayurvedic practitioner based in Los Angeles, also truly brilliant human being. And I just find that every time we talk about things, we're like, yeah, that's really good. So good. And we've been talking a lot about transitioning out of being in a pandemic and how, that I think there are so many people out there in the world who are like, I can't wait to go back to normal. But then, there are plenty of us who are like, what? You want to go, you want to go back to that? Really? Because, sweatpant life is great. And so, and every time we talk about it, I find that actually anytime we talk about anything, I'm like, I wish that we could have like a fly on the wall, or maybe not a fly because I don't like it when there are flies in the house, but some sort of like cute little squirrel on the wall listening to this, because everything that we talk about, I'm like, this needs to be a public conversation, basically, because yes, we come up with good things. So that is why we're having a live on transitions. And I think we both have an idea of a couple of different things that we would like to touch on, but that we were going to just sort of like chat about it and see where it goes, because we're good at that. If while we are talking, any of you have questions or comments or things that come up that you would like to add to the conversation, please do. This is why we have a chat area, and it's really nice to have additional input. And let's go. Transitions. Should I make this an elegant transition in the nature of what it is that we're discussing?
Yes.
It'd be awkward just to show that awkward transitions are totally okay.
I'll just sit here and bask in the awkwardness.
Yeah. Well, I think that like, oh, I'm on the wrong page. No wonder. I was like, wait, that's not what we're talking about. I think that like one of the main things that I find interesting about transitions is that it always feels like a shock. And yet, in reality, life is one long, never-ending transition. And like, it doesn't even stop when we die, because the second we die, all of a sudden we're transitioning into microbe food. So like, there's no pause. You don't ever get to hit pause on life. So I find it fascinating in general how hard all of us humans find transitions, because it's the one constant, really.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the main things that I want to explore. The difficult nature of this thing that is the underlying basis for our existence, and why it's difficult, and how to don't like using words like combat. How to
combat.
Yeah, how do we combat transition? Yeah. I guess how to learn to surrender to it and play with it and find grace within it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like thinking about the ebbs and flow of transition, that sometimes it's really really strong and present, and sometimes it's a more subtle transition. It is always there, but the ebb and flow, the quality of it is changing. And one of the ways that I think about that often is in seasonal change, and as we change throughout the cycles of the year. And in Ayurveda, we have a word, we actually talk a lot about something called Sandhi, SAN, like Nancy, DHI. And that's a joint. It's a vulnerable point. So we would talk about the season as like, let's say this is spring and this is summer. The Sandhi is the joint right in between. And so paying particular attention to those like vulnerable, weak, gentle, fragile places, I think are interesting to think about as transition too. Like how much in the transition are we? How prevalent is it? How full is the moon? That kind of thing.
Wow, I love that. That's so beautiful because it's like, I guess they're areas of overlap or liminal spaces where like the edge of one thing meets the edge of another. Ah, that's so interesting. How in in Ayurveda, how do you approach these things?
It's a good question. It's sort of, you want to balance out, we would think about balancing out the dosha or the elements that were present in the season before and kind of seeing those as heightened as we transition into the next. So right now, even though we're, heading towards the height of pitta or fire season, we're still kind of balancing kapha or the water earth elements from the season before. So it's like looking at what was previous and what's coming and looking at that transition between the two, how they might meet, what they share, what they don't share, where they might argue, things like that.
Wow, and that's so interesting that we're coming out of that in terms of the weather and also in terms of the pandemic. That's fascinating.
Right.
Because I think there's going to be so many people in the world who are just so desperate to get back to a faster pace and being out in public and like parties.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, oh, I was just going to say, I was out for dinner last night. I live in LA. It's so busy. And the streets were packed with people at restaurants. It was a little surreal. Felt like nothing ever happened, except we're all wearing masks. But other than that, you would never know.
wow. And that's
Yeah.
so fascinating. It's like the overlap of the seasonal, um, like water, rest, really going inwards, um, into this like outgoing, huh? And they are so conflicting. Like they couldn't be more opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. I was
Trace,
just reading what Tracy said as well.
those are natural transitions, and so maybe we are expected to be comfortable with don't feel natural to so many of us. Wait, I don't understand. Those are natural.
Tracy, are you saying that transition should be natural, but for some of us, it doesn't feel that way? Because I can relate to that, but I'm not sure if that's what you're saying. So often
So
not
we are
saying.
expected to be comfortable with, and they don't feel natural. Mhm.
Hmm. Lovely natural transitions, and sometimes it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, I can understand that, and I often feel that way. That like when I did live in LA and I knew that the hotness was coming, and I was like, it like happened every year, but every year I would be like, not ready for this. I don't want this. Anissa, hi Anissa. It's kind of bizarre, kind of like people can't help themselves. I think people are trying to think it's normal, but they don't know how to admit that it's not, and they've inherently changed. there's this really weird show on Netflix called Solo, and we were watching episode 4 last night. It's kind of a parody on what people are possibly going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, there's almost like a freneticness to the amount that people are trying to ignore that we are so different. um, it's interesting, sort of like like social contracts that many people have that seem to be about like mutually accepting that we won't talk about things. Um, yeah, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me think about like that flight response that we can end up in, like that kind of fast, erratic, like not quite knowing how to settle because we're swept up in the wind as we transition out. It's excitable. It's in some ways can feel very positive, but maybe the long-term sustainability of it isn't there.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like whenever there's any kind of transition that I'm going through, because I do not react well to change. And I think that it might be one of those things that's like a human experience that like change is the constant, fluctuation is the constant, but then our human selves just like it's like one of those human being conflicts that we're constantly dealing with, which is like the deepening layers of surrender to the fact that we are not in control.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so whenever there's a transition happening, especially one that I am resistant to, while my initial reaction or tendency is to want to go into a flight response, I find that the only times that I have sort of navigated a transition, I won't go so far as to say elegantly, but navigated it without struggle has been
Mm-hmm.
when I slow down and pay attention even more. And it goes so counter to how I think so many of us are like automatically respond to things, which is to try and like resist, fight, speed up, do more things, I'm gonna try and get in as much rest and PJ time as I can because everything's going back soon. But like in reality, when I think we slow down even more, it it's almost like a way that our bodies can nourish themselves through the change, because the slower we move, the more like regenerating our energy levels are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I have that tendency too. My natural inclination is to want to move faster, harder, quicker, as fast as I can, no patience when it comes to transition. But I think about also, I have friends whose individual stress response is so different, where their natural inclination is to shut down and to go really slow. And so it's interesting to kind of see how we all have such different needs in this time. Like for me, slowing down, absolutely. And then I think about one of my best friends whose natural tendency is to go really slow. And so for her, the medicine is to actually speed up. Um,
Ooh.
it's kind of interesting to think about our individual constitutions and how we know, because in Ayurveda, we say when you're out of balance, you crave what keeps you out of balance. So my like coffee addiction helps me stay in my flight mode, right? So as opposed to thinking maybe like throat coat would actually be better for me, moistening and slowing down and being a little bit more present.
That's fascinating. Yes, and that makes so much sense because now that you mention it, I do know plenty of people who slow down. And there are definitely some areas in which, like if I'm packing for a vacation and have to leave the house, I used to do it in a hurry, and then I realized that I felt like I was leaving pieces of myself behind. So I started getting like resistantly slow about leaving, where it would like take 3 days for me to like sloth towards the door. And like my husband's standing there jangling his keys, like, we're gonna miss the flight, we have to go. And I'm like, but I might have forgotten something. He's like, you've been writing lists for 6 months. If you were going to forget something, you're not going to remember it in the next 30 seconds. Let's go. You're packed, you're dressed, you're ready. And I'm like, but I need to say goodbye to Henry. I haven't said goodbye to Henry, the fig tree, yet. And he's like, you've been saying goodbye to Henry for 2 weeks. And I'm like, but I. And there's like no amount of slowing down that is going to get me used to leaving my house to go to the airport and get in like a tin can and fly through the air. Like, no amount, because the slowness is, in those cases, resistance. Um,
Really.
that's so, I'd never thought about that before.
Yeah, I do. I still am in the fast pace. I had to go to a Joshua Tree last week and I left all of my packing for the last minute. And I had to take my big computer, my desktop with me, and I left the keyboard. I spent all week like figuring out the right case for the computer and how I'm going to carry it and where I'm going to put it in the car. And then I left the keyboard. Like, sometimes our patterns are so ingrained.
So true. So true. I started in the last couple of months, like forcing myself to leave, even though I'm like, I must have forgotten something. And I'm like, you're just going out for 2 hours. Like, you're fine. And like forcing myself to do it anyway, just to see, as an experiment. It's uncomfortable.
It
It's really
is.
uncomfortable. But then slowing
Hmm.
down when you want to hurry is also uncomfortable.
Oh my God, it's painful.
It is.
Hmm. Feels like someone's slamming on the brakes and your head is just gonna like hit the dashboard.
Yeah. And I know, no, the answer is definitely more caffeine.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Always, always more caffeine.
Yeah.
Um, but somebody had commented in the question that you posted, and they were saying, I think I wrote down the quote, it was the right quality of energy behind transitions. And they were talking about gait as you go from fast to slow or slow to fast. And like that right quality of transition. I love the way they said it in their comments. I think they were tying it to music. Um,
I'll try and find it.
yeah, it is like, how do we slowly speed up or slow down? Like a warm up when we're
Oh,
exercising.
Kyle said, um, as first a musician and then an equestrian, we spend a huge amount of time working with transitions. The key to transitions in both is that you need the right quality of energy behind the transitions or you will collapse in a heap. Both going from a slower tempo or gait to a higher tempo or gait and back down again need the appropriate amount of focus and energy behind them. Too little and you get stuck in the muck. Too much and you blow through them. I think transitions in life can be really similar. Too little energy and you stand muddling in the muck for too long, and too much and you miss some things rushing into the next thing. Wow. I purposefully place transitions throughout my day so that I'm not just jumping from one thing to the next. Right now, I'm definitely working on stepping out of the muck of the pandemic and taking steps forward. That's brilliant.
Isn't that, I loved that when I read it. It just felt so on point. And I love thinking about music in that way too, as it speeds up or slow down, that graceful transition in between songs, right? Kind of, it
Yeah,
makes it feel a little bit more poetic than like some of the other ways I think about transition.
that's so true. No, yeah, that was really, really nice. Hmm. I'm just reading the other comments.
Hmm.
And I think like the pace, it's like the right pace and the right amount of energy also sort of feed into each other.
Hmm.
Like if you're moving at the right pace, you have the right amount of energy. And using the right amount of energy, you're moving at the right pace.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. I guess the question that comes up for me is like, how do I know when it's time to push harder? When do I know when it's time to slow down? Like, because that there is that little tricky mind that's like, you should definitely slow down. There's no
yeah,
need for you to go any faster. You can stay on the couch for an extra week.
totally.
Or definitely, like you said, caffeine is the answer. 10 more cups of coffee and you'll get it done, no problem.
Totally. Like I just can't wait to be out of this. And so I'm not even going to like stop to think about anything that has come in the past. Like I don't need to think about what I've learned from this. I just want to move on.
Hmm.
And yeah, how do we know? And I think like you said, it's so constitution based.
Hmm. Hmm. Constitution, history, patterns, right? All
Mm,
of that. I'm sure like childhoods play a role in that as well. Um, yeah, it's like a titration of how do we find that balance? Because everyone's center point, I think, is going to be so different on the spectrum
yeah.
of slow to fast. Um, but yeah, for me, I've really gotten to know well the fast parts. The slow parts, I'm still like figuring out because I need the slowness. But the fast parts, I'm like, oh, I know that I'm doing that thing and that thing and that thing, and I haven't had any water. It's usually my first indicator. Cheers.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Thank you. That was helpful. I remember once I think I was teaching a class with Jim McDonald, and I had like a full giant bottle of water sitting next to me, and he was like, and you can always tell, you'll ask someone like, do you drink water? And they'll be like, yeah, I drink water all the time. And they'll show you a full bottle of water. And then you'll say, but do you actually drink that? And they'll be like, oh. And I was like, yes, yes, I drink water all the time.
I know I have to trick myself. I'll drink herbal tea all day long, no problem. But water, that's like, I don't know what it is. It's so hard for me.
I find it so much easier with lemon in it.
Hmm.
I love
Hmm.
lemon. It's like, I think my favorite food. It's just like, I could probably just eat them like them. Um, so yeah, that makes it like a treat that I'm trying to drink all day instead of
Hmm.
like water on its own. Is
Yeah. I like the idea of thinking about just something really simple. Like, what if every single person just took on the practice of noticing their water intake as we transition out, right? Like, what do you need more water? Do you need less water? Changing the temperature of your water. Like, if that one simple thing could be an anchor as we transition out, like using that as your marker,
that's fascinating. Tell me
right?
more.
Because I don't know. I feel like everyone everyone has such a different relationship with water. I know plenty of people who over drink water. They just feel thirsty all the time. That could be an indicator of like too much heat in the body. There's some of us who don't drink anywhere near enough water. So I think about every single person is going to have a different relationship with it, but using that as your marker throughout the day to say, have I had enough water? Have I had too much water? Have I gotten up to get water? I don't know. I think it could be an interesting kind of marker.
That's so true
Because,
because these things are things that we know about ourselves already that we can base our like have feedback based on something that's pretty concrete. Like we know how like yeah, it's a really good representation of where our energy is, where our attention is.
mhm. Like for me, I can pretty much always catch myself around like sometime between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. And I'll know how far out of balance I am if I'm reaching for coffee or chai or water. Because I should be going for water, but it's usually when I'll convince myself that I need an extra cup of chai.
That's
And
hilarious.
and then that's my like, oh hey girl, catch yourself.
Oh, that's really good because yeah, between 2 and 4, mine would be sugar,
Mm-hmm.
lots of it, and um, because it's like it gives the, similarly to caffeine in a way, like gives me the energy boost to get through the rest of the day. Whereas what I have been trying to do lately is to just go and lie down,
Yeah.
because I know people who nap. That's cute. Um, but I like I don't nap. I can't nap. Like I'll lie down in the afternoon and just be like, this is just this moment definitely calls for Choco.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's been really interesting to notice lately. I think it's around 3 p.m. Between 3
Hmm.
and 4 that I am like weaving on my feet. And if someone else showed up to me like that, I'd be like, go and lie down. Like, why are you trying to force yourself to do things? Like, I can't. I must push through for some reason. Like, so yeah, it's going to lie down.
Hmm.
For me, works better than the Choco solution, which could be a book title.
Right.
Um, and that is so interesting because maybe for other people, going to lie down is like further contributing to a feeling of stagnation, and the answer is to go for a walk.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so I guess from that, I would say, what is the goal? Like, what's the priority here? Like, or do you not even that? It's like, or I guess what do you notice as the cumulative effect of these behaviors over time? Like, does lying down in the afternoon every day make you feel better, or does it make you feel more and more sluggish over time?
Mm.
Does like drinking tons of water, or like maybe setting, I would totally just set an alarm every hour. I should do that. Wait, I haven't done that. um, and like, does it make you feel better or worse? Do
Mm.
you
Hmm.
are you just like spending all day on the loo because you're drinking too much water? Like, or do you have more energy and feel more clarity? And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously like have the language of Ayurveda, but like the way that I would think about it is primarily digestive system and like physical functioning. So for me, for example, with all of the extra caffeine that I don't need, I notice it affects my digestive system, and then that shows up in dry skin and anxiety. So I have like excess vata or wind, right? So
Mhm.
my goal would be to balance that, to bring that down by doing these like slowing down nourishing practices. So maybe somebody who tends to fall more on the earthy watery kapha side, their goal would be to find more activity and less stagnation. So that would show up physically in terms of like weight gain, sluggishness, um, slow digestion, maybe oilier skin. So I guess I always look at like the physical markers in the body as goal points, because the body doesn't lie, and we can very much like create good stories in our heads that tell us otherwise.
So
Very
true.
compelling stories that
So
tell us
true.
otherwise.
So true. Do you mind talking a little more about that?
Mm.
About just the constitutions and what to look for in the body as indicators? Because I don't know if everyone here is familiar with Ayurveda, and if they are, I learned the most fascinating thing about Ayurveda from you that I had no idea about, which is that the constitutions are imbalances. Um, I had no idea. So Yeah, if you don't mind talking more about it, I think it would be really useful and help
Yeah,
people have a like their own gauges.
yeah. So Ayurveda, traditional medical science from India, based in the elements, and we have three constitutions called the doshas. And it's said that you are born with one constitution. It's called your prakriti, and it's fixed, and that's who you always want to come back to. But oftentimes, when we talk about the doshas, we're talking about the ways that you go out of balance. So you could be born one constitution and go out of balance in any of the other three. It doesn't have to be the same. So the first one is called Vata, and that's space and air. So I think about it like the wind or like a very frenetic butterfly. And it tends to be people who have a very thin constitution. They can either be very tall or very short. But what we find is that the most common trait within Vata is like an unpredictability. It's very erratic. It's very fast moving. It thinks, talks, breathes quickly. It's very creative in nature. Um, Cold and dry are the primary qualities of it. So it talks quickly, thinks quickly, processes quickly. But when that quickness becomes excessive, we see constipation, dryness in the digestive tract, gas and bloating, dry skin, and anxiety. So constipation, gas, bloating, anxiety, um, trouble sleeping will come up as well. So that's Vata. There's Pitta, which is fire and water. And I think about that a little bit more like the tiger. And so that's somebody who's got a more medium height and weight. They have a more athletic build. They tend towards muscle mass pretty easily. And they run hot because they're fire. But when this, so mentally speaking, they're very driven, passionate, forward moving people. When this heat becomes excessive, generally an imbalance is because we have too much of something. They start to burn up their digestive system. So we see looser stools, we see heartburn, acidity. In the skin, we might notice rashes, hives, eczema, things like that. And then mentally, we're going to see more of the heated capacity like anger, frustration, impatience, some of those hot emotions. And then kapha, our third one, is earth and water. And I think about it like a sweet baby elephant. And like it takes up a little bit more space, it has a bigger container, it's slow moving, very empathic, very calming, very wonderful to be around. But when that heaviness becomes too heavy, we see weight gain, just overall indigestion. We see depression, lethargy, lack of motivation, and skin issues. So we have balance and imbalance states, but most of the time what we're talking about is our imbalances.
Wow. And is it like when we talk about the humoral temperaments, like we all have all of them
Mhm.
in various combinations? Is it like that as well, where we're all of them? It's just like they exhibit in
Yeah.
different ways and in different phases of our lives.
Exactly. Yeah, we all have all of them. You're going to be born with a certain constitution that could be predominant in one, two, very rarely, but it does happen. Sometimes they're predominant in all three. So there's different ways of talking about it in different schools of thought. You could say that you're like a percentages of them. You could give them like a 3-2-1 grading system, or you could just say like, for me, I'm a Pitta Vata, like I'm predominantly fire and air. And then when I go out of balance, it tends to be in the air type of way in Vata.
Wow. So when you know this, then it becomes so much easier to say in transitions, I would tend more towards my areas of imbalance because this is how we deal with a stress response. Like the body feels overwhelmed and then we deal with stress by
Yeah.
either like burning through energy or putting on the brakes and slowing down and like trying to conserve resources um,
Hmm.
or trying to fight
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah. The three doshas kind of line up perfectly with the flight, fight, and freeze.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it very much gives us like our three kind of main stress responses and how we react. And then based on the season, like if you tend to go out of balance in a fire type of way, then summer is going to be a harder season for you because the natural world around you is not giving you a balance. It's increasing what you already have within you.
Wow, and I could see this being like so complex in terms of things like not just like your genetic history, and so like where is your family, your genetic history from in terms of like weather and climate, or
Hmm.
where are we from in terms of weather and climate, and then trauma history
Hmm.
probably
Hmm.
has a massive impact on it.
Yeah, for sure. And even, very early life, or maybe even still in the womb, trauma that could impact that as well. So many people had traumatic births or traumatic times in the womb that they come out they come into the world with already an imbalance in their constitution.
Wow. There's there's no way to like Hermione it, right? Like give me a list of things to be perfect
No.
all day, every day, every day. I'll be the most perfect constitutioned person.
Nope. Which is why I love it because everyone's such an individual. There isn't like we're all striving for the same thing, which I think like in our Western fast pace, like we're all striving to be the most productive ever. So, you
Totally.
know,
Oh, it's so interesting. And I guess in that way, it's like your practice is based on the fact that the body is constantly in flux
in
and
flow.
pulsation.
Yeah.
And hmm, this is really interesting.
Yeah, it's like a constant dance between them. And then if you want to get even more interesting, the doshas impact both the body and the mind, but we also have what we call the mental doshas. So the mind is also impacted by different energies, and that can always change. So it's sort of this spectrum between what we call tamas or being really stuck, really sedentary, kind of cloudy, heavy, rajas, this like ability to change and move forward, sometimes overly so, sometimes not enough. And then what we call sattva or a clear, calm, mind with equanimity. And so you're always on this spectrum, kind of moving towards equanimity. So you could be like an airy person who has a fast-paced mind, and that's going to be very different than an airy person with like a dull mind, or an airy person with like a clear mind, right? So there's all of these different interactions that we can have within
Wow, that's so cool.
it.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a very spiritual science in that way. It is so much about the body, but it gives so much attention to how we treat our minds. And especially in things like through transition, do we have that really rigid, stuck mind? Do we have more of that active mind that's like ready to go? Or do we fall into that like clear, calm, open to like the daily change?
And is sattvic mind the goal, or okay?
Yeah.
I'm trying not to get like too
There is a goal.
and is there a 5-step plan to get to the okay.
Well, in Ayurveda, digestion is everything. You start with your digestive system, and that's everything.
5 steps to a sattvic mind.
I'm sure somebody has written that book. I'm not kidding.
So probably. Um, someone who probably heard the word somewhere once. Um, so then, I guess I am curious with um, those of you who are here watching, do you know yourself? Like, do you know whether you tend more towards like fight, flight, or freeze in when you get stressed? Like, do you tend more towards being more vata, pitta, or kapha? Did I say
Mm. Yeah, you did. Yeah, I would love to know if
that?
people have that. Sometimes they're a combination of all three.
Wow.
We try to fight, it doesn't work, so then we run, and then we get tired from running, so we freeze.
This sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm. But okay, so we'll tie it back to transitions, which
okay.
is to say that, like, I think we all are going to maneuver transitions so differently. Um, which of the three is Vata? I freeze. Kapha would be more of the freeze. Yeah.
Well, fight then flight, never freeze.
Mm, yeah.
That makes sense because I know Laurel, and Laurel is like so airy.
I think I am fight or freeze for sure. Yeah. And what's interesting about freeze is that sometimes it can feel like flight because your body might be frozen, but your mind is so going, so anxious sometimes that it feels like you're doing so much, but you're really physically sedentary. See, freeze slash flight, but fight if things don't let up.
I
Flight two, I hide. Yeah.
Yeah. So
hmm
so then I guess like when it comes to transitioning, like life transitions, but I think also, transitioning out of an epidemic, the or epidemic, pandemic. Um, uh, Christy, I leans towards Kappa, and I totally freeze.
hmm
Yeah, when it comes to transitioning and the ways that we're going to feel stresses in response to it, we're
hmm
super excited.
Yeah. I mean, I think it can be a little bit helpful to like stereotype in some ways, like if we were to say the three different stress responses, like what they might experience. Um, and so with Vata or that flight response, I see people moving really quickly right back into old ways of being, kind of like, oh, now that I can go out, I'm going to plan coffee this day, go out to dinner this day, go to the
I
gym
know
this
these people.
day, plant that day.
I so know these people.
No rest,
No
just
rest.
like ready. I'm vaccinated. Let me go see everybody.
And I guess like also there would be, and if there's underlying stress, it would also be like sleeping less,
Yes,
probably relying more on things like sugar and caffeine, and
eating less,
eating less.
snacking, or just forgetting to eat.
So interesting.
hmm
Whereas for more pitta people fight, what would that look like in this?
It's interesting. I see a lot of people who, well, I see two different things. One is like fast paced, going back just to like things were like I'm going back to my schedule, my routine, going back to the office, back to the gym, back to everything.
People too.
um, and also like no one else around you is transitioning well enough. Like
Ouch.
yeah, that person's transitioning too fast, that person's transitioning too slow, that restaurant should have done that better. There can be a little bit of that, again, heated emotion
I
that can
feel
come
like
with
a
it.
tiny bit called out by this right now.
Oh, do you?
Ouch.
We all have imbalances.
No, 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 no. I
Not
am doing
you, not
I'm
you.
doing the 5-step plan. I can't. Um, yes, this makes so much sense. Yes, someone I know has already like scheduled out the next like 2 months of meetings, and it's like life is back,
Yep.
totally
Hmm.
back. That's interesting.
And then I think there's the kappa, which would be like, I'm not ready. I'm just going to stay on the couch for like an extra month and then we'll see and go about it then.
Yes. And then
And
what?
so, yeah.
So like, I guess and it's not necessary to, I personally, but I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner. Um, but the way I would look at it is like it's only necessary to balance these things out if they're actually causing harm in the
Right,
body, right? Like
right,
being, having tendencies towards being like quick and outgoing and wanting to like do so many things isn't a bad thing unless you're starting to lose sleep and not eating and like all you've eaten for the last 3 days is candy and um and
right. Oh,
like yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So that would be like maybe the more vata way, pitta way would be more like looser stools, feeling hot, sweating easily, irritable, road rage, things that you might not notice are imbalances. Sorry.
That's funny. Rashes.
Yep.
Okay. um,
Hmm.
and then
Kappa would probably have more, I would guess, like lethargy, maybe losing connection with people that you care about, feeling a little bit low, maybe emotionally, not wanting to reach out to friends, things
oh,
like that.
yeah, okay, so
Hmm.
it's when it starts to veer into this, then we start thinking about balancing it.
Right.
Makes so much sense.
Right. Because there are probably, I'm hopeful that there are people out there who are just transitioning gracefully and they don't have these imbalances, but I'm not one of them. I'm way too sensitive.
Yeah, and I think also like being just in a place where there's so many people, um like it's
Yeah,
not just our sensitivity, it's everyone else's emotional stuff as well that's
for
going
sure.
on that affects us too. And so it's like we aren't just individuals experiencing our own experience of re-emerging. It is an entire society all connected to each other, feeling each
Right.
other and thinking that we're individuals. So
Right. Right. And comparing myself, like, oh, well, that person is like already living their lives. I should be living my life.
totally. Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think like one of the things that I think about a lot when it comes to this as well is that people are trying to go back, but
Hmm.
there's no going back. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
work like that. Time doesn't work in reverse. You can't go through something that is like a major global trauma and just like, well, that's over. So, you know, see you in Tulum. See you at Burning Man. Like it just doesn't work like that. Like you can't as an individual just um put a traumatic experience away. And like I mean I think a lot of people try to go back to normal
Hmm.
afterwards, and it's like the cracks start to appear. And
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
it's like that as a society as well. Like there's no going back, but there is a some people are desperate to go back and some people are desperate not to go back.
Hmm.
But both of these perspectives on it are ignoring the fact that there's no such thing.
Yeah.
And so the only way to look really is into the present of where we are in the middle of this joint.
Hmm.
Again,
Sunday.
sandy,
Yeah.
in the middle of this sandy, and where our focus is and moving forwards. Like, what do we bring out of
Hmm.
this experience, this like individual and collective experience that we've been through, because there's so many things that I find that pre-pandemic I wasn't aware of, and then all of a sudden, like, my priorities shifted, and the things that I started to value shifted, and like my close friendships became closer, and my acquaintanceships sort of like,
Mhm.
not quite as important, and all of, I think, like, what we take from it and what we learn from it is also so individual, because some people are going to come through it and be like, I hadn't realized how important my acquaintances were. um I hadn't realized how much I love being at a party surrounded by strangers and just talking to people. um Whereas some of us are going to be like, I hadn't realized how little I needed that ever. um like, my little sister was just like, I can't wait to go to a concert, and I was like, oh, I need to find a new excuse to not have to do these things now, because I can't just say we're in a pandemic, so I'm not coming. I just have to say I don't want to. Um, so yeah, like, what we value, I think, has in some ways become so apparent. And so, like, how do we, or like, not how do we, but we can move forwards by like holding on to these things lightly as, the things that we don't necessarily need to cling to in order to never, ever, 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 ever let go of again, and never have to experience anything that's not this again. And we don't have to completely reject them, but like, what did we learn? What became important? And what do we want the world to look like afterwards?
Mhm.
Um, I know that for me personally, I A, want sweatpants and comfy clothes to be the norm for everyone if they want them to be. Um, that would be fun. But more importantly, I find that, or I think that I want introversion to be more societally acceptable. And for, yeah, I want introversion to be more societally acceptable, because I think it's because I don't think it is for many.
Mhm.
And the, like, I was, joking about saying, shit, now I need to find excuses for things. But in reality, I think that is true for many.
Mhm.
This, like, oh God, now the invites are going to keep coming. And now, like, you know, it, or now I have to, now I have to go back to doing all of these things or being around all of these people. And it's like, do we, if we don't want
Mhm.
to? Um, so this is what I think about moving forwards.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that. It makes me think of, do you know the phrase post-traumatic growth?
no.
Yeah, there's an article in I think it was the New Yorker a couple years back about this idea of post-traumatic growth, and it really speaks to like the resilience of the human spirit and the ways in which that we can grow after something very traumatic has happened, and like just the new ways that we stretch and grow and become a different person. And I think that there is a collective way that that's happening. Um, in me, it was actually the opposite. I'm very introverted and I've never needed an excuse. If I don't want to go, I won't go. But this past year, I missed people so much. I missed being in person and hugging people and being in community and, the coffee guy down the street or like whatever. I just really missed it. Um, and what I hear you saying is like all of the new ways that are different ways or deeper ways that you experience joy in the year, kind of deepening into that joy. And I really think that that's such a marker of post traumatic growth is how do we imbibe and imbue this like new way of being joyful given everything that we've been through. right? Not needing to erase it, but integrating it.
That's so beautiful. And I think one of the things that I noticed when I was in LA a couple of weeks ago was the ways
Hmm.
that people are talking to each other.
Hmm.
It's like the feeling of emergence isn't like, it's beautiful the way that strangers are talking to each other and the way like the conversations that we're having, and it feels like this collective feeling of lightness that is really, really beautiful.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's been such a divisive year politically, socially, um, in terms of health choices as well. It was very divisive. So it's nice, I think, to see just like, oh, right, but we're all still human, despite our beliefs, despite our the ways that we've all acted like assholes, right? How can we still find this common humanity for one another?
That's really beautiful. It,
Right?
it is. I think it's like, I think it's so important to refocus on that, on the like what unites us, what's beautiful about this emergence, what is
Hmm.
good about the emergence, and like the things that we're resistant to, like do they need to be things that we are resistant to, or do they just need to be things that we make choices about in future?
Right,
um,
right. Yeah. I was just thinking about, I had this flashback to, before the pandemic started in the past few years, I was like, okay, I'm going to take this vow. I'm going to vow to be compassionate to all human beings. And pre-pandemic, it was like, yeah, I love people. This is great. As long as you're over there and I'm over here, it's great. Um, and so this year has really been a practice of testing out like that deep well of compassion, especially with so much that happened politically and socially. I think it's really like you're working those compassion muscles hard. I am deadlifting a lot of compassion right now.
it's so
uh,
true. It's so true. I think like from the outside it looks like easy, or like what you don't care, and it's like it's yeah, it's like it's not caring. It's a lot of work.
a
So
lot a lot
yeah,
of work. So yeah, I think transitioning out is like how we go to those subtle places and like what we're taking with us in that joy and that compassion, how we like work those practices because they're hard.
they are hard.
They're
It's true.
hard. Yeah, but I love what you posted about. I think you were texting a friend about texting each other what you enjoyed about that day, something like that. I
Yeah,
think that's such a wonderful way of doing that.
it's such a wonderful practice, and it feels so good. And it's like, I think we're conditioned as humans with brains to constantly be scanning for what's bad, what's dangerous, what's out of place. And so to
Yeah.
purposefully realign the focus onto, well, what's good
Hmm.
is takes work, but it definitely um, feels good. Not just like feels good in a light way, but it feels good in the body. It feels like it feels productive
Hmm.
because it completely changes your outlook towards everything when you start focusing on things like that. Like it's not just like, oh, now I'm able to bypass everything in life and not ever have to think about bad things, but it changes. It's like a muscle that you flex where you get to see more options in every moment. So
Yeah.
that feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah. feels healing. It's like you can still feel the pain. It's still a little wobbly, but there's something good happening.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's like the the thing with transitions in general is that there is good happening and there is something dying in every moment. Hi,
Hmm.
Scorpio. And that
Yeah.
sometimes the thing that is dying is something that we can't wait to be rid of. So we're excitedly rushing forwards towards the future. And sometimes the thing that is dying is something that we really enjoyed. And so we are, like, no, 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 like my dog when it's bath time. Um,
Totally.
but that if we, whether we're running forwards or holding back, like returning our focus with joy to the present moment,
Hmm.
whether we do that quickly or slowly, whether it's like drinking more water or less water.
Napping or not napping,
Mhm.
napping or walking.
Mhm. Oh,
Hmm. Hi, puppy.
yeah, she's trying to attack someone. But focusing on what is good about it, because
Yeah.
we can't stop it. We can't stop the passage of time or the fact that things change or that things die, but we can. I really want to know what's happening out there. But we can practice equanimity with it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading somewhere, and I can't remember where it was, but I remember this quote vaguely. It was that to be alive is to be able to have tears or joy in any given moment, and sort of that ripeness of being alive, right? And that, like, it can be good to share in grief with others. It can be good to share in discomfort with others. That also, it doesn't have to necessarily feel like, champagne and balloons all the time.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm. Yeah. I think knowing your individual tendencies and how to align those so that you can find whatever is helpful, beautiful, compassionate in the moments as we transition out.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Is it time for your quote?
It is time for my quote. Okay, so this is from Mark Nepo's The Book of Awakening. The glassblower knows, while in the heat of beginning, any shape is possible. Once hardened, the only way to change is to break. I love that.
So much.
Mm. Any thoughts or comments from anyone listening? We'd love to know what you think.
Has this been helpful? Have you learned things?
I guess not.
With the slate shit.
Absolutely. Thank you, Orna.
Good, good, good. Um, while everyone else is replying, uh, Tell people how to find you.
Yeah, you can. Oh, thanks, Leah. You can find me. Thanks, Laurel. You can find me on Instagram at Anjali, Anjali. My name's Anjali Deva, but
Can
just
we
at
just
Anjali.
can we just talk for one moment about how you have a
Got
Beyonce?
that?
Yeah, you got your own name.
I'm the Beyonce of Ayurveda. Yeah.
Oh, amazing! I want to be the Beyonce of anything. The Beyonce of Ayurveda.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm gonna when I write this up, that's what I'm gonna say.
It's a big title. I don't know if I can hold that.
I'll just call you the Beyonce. I'm gonna just that'll be your
My
thingy in
name
my
and your
phone.
phone.
In my phone, I'm the Beyonce of Ayurveda. Sorry, I interrupted you. So
No, you're good. So Instagram's at Anjali, or you can go to my website, Rooted Rasa, RASA, rootedrasa.com. And I see people, I talk to people, I teach things, I have Ayurveda school, do all kinds of fun stuff. So stay in touch if it was interesting.
thank you so much for coming to Wonderkin
Thank
and
you.
talking with me and teaching me and all of us more about Ayurveda. It's so interesting.
I hope so. It's a really cool science.
It's amazing. It's yeah, really fascinating. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you. This is so fun.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Bye.
Bye.